was 1740 when the anti-literacy laws were enacted in the South. These laws made it illegal for any white person to teach any black person to read or write. Now, you have to understand, these laws came at a time during slavery and after uprisings, and white men were afraid that black people would forget their place if they learned to read and write. In Norfolk, Virginia, a few of the white people were a little confused about the law. They thought that as long as the black people were free, it was okay to teach them to read and write. Black children were being taught in Sunday school. So Margaret Douglass, a single white mother who transplanted from South Carolina to Norfolk, Virginia, she felt it was her duty, obligation as a human being to help those less fortunate than herself. She took it upon herself to help some black children learn to read and write. Later, she started a school in her home to continue to help these children. Margaret had no idea that the law prohibited white people from teaching any black people from reading and writing. She thought it was just those enslaved. So for 11 months, Margaret ran her school with her daughter and taught several black children to read and write. One day a knock comes at the door, and it's the police, who then informs her that she's breaking the law. Margaret was summoned to court. She appeared on her appointed day and time, walked in the courtroom calm, cool, and collected as can be to defend herself in her own defense. Margaret started her opening statement just sharing who she was, that she was a Southerner, she was not an abolitionist, she loved the South, and she would do nothing illegal within her knowledge. But Margaret sealed her own fate that day. In the midst of her commentary, she was motivated to share a lot more than what she said about herself. She was probably a little annoyed because some of the people that taught these same children at church did not doing so. So Margaret went on to tell the men about themselves. Of course, you know, this is a time of white men running the courtroom. Margaret said, "Oh no, it is not expected that gentlemen will take the trouble to seek out a Negro hut for the purpose of alleviating the wretchedness he may find within it." Margaret, in plain and simple terms, called these men out for sleeping with the black women and fathering these what she called half-breed children, and their wives had to just deal with it, right? And so nobody likes their sin put on display, especially if they're not ready to own it themselves. This is what Margaret did. As a result, Margaret was found guilty of the crime in which she was accused. She was sentenced and served 6 months in jail. Margaret was released, didn't hold a grudge, but she did state that these accusers of mine, these who sit in condemnation of me, are wicked. They apparently don't read their Bible. They apparently don't worship God, because they sit here like they have done nothing but lived a righteous life. Margaret, in turn, decided North Fork, Virginia was not the place for her. She packed up her things and her daughter and left North Fork in her rear view.